YouTubers. Today I'm going to show you how to knit, and today we will make knitted dishcloths. Here is 16 stitches, and this one here happens to measure 4 by 3 1/4, and it is 26 rows. And this one here is 18 stitches across, which is 4 1/4 by 3 1/2 inches high, and it is 30 rows. So let's get started on the things that you will need. You will need yarn, and I use the Red Heart Super Saver yarn. 4-ply worsted yarn is what I like using for my dishcloths. And you will need size 8 knitting needles. You will need a pair of scissors, and you will also need a tapestry needle. So let's get started. Today I'm going to do just the small one, size 16 stitches. So what you need to do is make a slip knot, sorry. Any way that you prefer. This is how I do it. Take your knitting needle. Now, slide this over. What you need to do is, this is how I do, this is called casting on your stitches, and this is how I do it. I take my working strand of yarn, I hold the tail between my thumb and my pointer finger. I hold it, and I just used 2 fingers on my left hand, and I wrap the yarn around it, and I take the working yarn and crisscross the yarn coming from the skein, and I just go under, and then I release and pull. So that's 2. Your slip stitch counts as your first stitch. So this is 2, 3. Again, wrap it around, crisscross the yarn, take your needle, go in between your fingers and up from the bottom up through, and then just pull. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and again, you wrap around the 2 fingers, crisscross, under, up through your 2 fingers, and then just pull. 16. Now you transfer the cast-on stitches to your left hand if you are right-handed. If you are left-handed, then you would pick up your knitting needle in your left hand and proceed. I'm right-handed, so we'll do it right-handed. Now take your yarn. Now what you want to do is you go in, this is called garter stitch. This here is called a garter stitch, and it's what it means is that you're knitting every row. Every stitch, every row. So you go in between put your needle in your right hand, you go in between the first stitch and the second stitch. You go from the left side to the right side and through. So now you have your needles crisscrossed. You take your working yarn, you wrap it, it's a little hard to hold the needles when you first do it, but I'll show you the easier way when you put more rows on. You take your working yarn and you go under and around and down through in between the 2 needles. So now you have your yarn. You want to hold your yarn. I usually hold it like this, so it's not going to slip off. The stitch isn't going to slip off from you. Then I take my pointer finger and I hold the tip of my right hand needle and I push it down, and at the same time you twist it to where you bring the needle through the stitch, and now you have, if you can see, you have 1 stitch on the right and 1 stitch on the left, and you're transferring the stitch of the left onto the right. And then you just slip all the way up. You slip the stitch off the needle on the left needle, and then you just pull the string on the right, and then you transferred your stitch. Again, you hold your needles like this. You take your right needle in between the two stitches, and you go into the first stitch from the left to the right. It's a little bit hard on the when you try and knit your first row, but the second and then on the rest is really easy. Take your working yarn again, bring it around from behind the right needle, down in between the two needles, hold the string tight, push the right needle down and push it through the loop. Now you have the loop transferred onto here, onto your right needle. Then you take your loop on your right needle and you push it off the needle, and then you just pull the string tight. Again, between the two stitches, from left to right, take your yarn, bring it to the back, up, down through, around, and down through the middle, push the stitch through, and then slip the stitch off the other needle. And you do this all the way, and this is called the knit stitch. Purl is where you, instead of going in from the front, you go in through the back, but I'll show you that at a much later time. So you just continue like this. Again, I will slow it down and I will show you. In between the two, right needle, in between the two stitches, bring it from the left to the right. So your needles are crisscrossed. Take your working yarn, bring it to the back, up, over, down through, slip your right needle through the loop on the left needle, and then you pull it up, and then you slip off the loop of the left and you tighten on the right, and then you can just slide these down. So this is how, and this is, like I said, is the knit stitch. I'm trying to stay low to show you in frame. So, but if you've been knitting as long as I have, you can just sit and watch a TV program and knit without even watching. Okay, now we are at the end of the row. So now what you do, you transferred all the stitches from the left to the right. Now what you want to do is switch hands. You put the stitch, the one with the stitches on it, in your left hand, and always the empty needle, your working needle, in your right hand. Again, okay, now I will show you how, and you can do this on your lap, but you take your needle and you stand it straight up. I don't know if it's going to pick it up here, but, and you do the same thing in between the two stitches. Just poke it through, take your working yarn around, down, through, put your needle through, pull off the stitch, and there you go. But this is how I was taught to do it. But your second row here, this is how I do it. I hold the needle upright, stationary, and I put the needle through the same way, in between the stitches, left to the right, bring the yarn up and around, everything like that. I do everything the same thing, but instead of moving the needles, I keep my right needle stationary, and I'm just moving the left needle up and off. I don't know if you can see this, but, and so that way, and you hold the needle on your lap, but for demonstration purposes, I'm just showing you here on the table. So let me bring it down low, because I don't know if you were able to see any of that. I hope you could hear me and get the idea. But this is all you do. You keep doing this for the next 26 rows. If you want to make it that big and make it that size, you can make it any size you want. but I will come back when I am ready to show you how to bind it off. But that's all you do. There is your stitches some are going to be tight, some are going to be loose, but eventually you will grasp the tension, how much you need to pull the yarn. So I will finish it, and then I will come back to you and show you how to bind it off and finish it off.